Part 1. The Stolen Brain in Math Myth. Just hours after Albert Einstein drew his final breath at Princeton Hospital in 1955, an unprecedented medical heist took place in the dark. Pathologist Thomas Harvey secretly used a scalpel to extract the genius brain from the skull, stuffed it into a glass jar, and bolted. He sliced the entire brain into 240 tiny pieces, preserved them in chemicals, and hid them in a cooler under beer bottles for 40 years just to find the genius gene. But before that brain was chopped into hundreds of pieces under a foam box, the world once considered its owner completely useless. You've definitely heard the familiar inspiring story. Einstein was terrible at math as a kid, right? That is actually the cheapest, most persistent media lie in educational history. The truth is, at age 12, while his peers were struggling with basic arithmetic, Einstein had already self-taught advanced algebra and calculus. Young Einstein wasn't bad at math. He just viewed the mechanical rote learning education system of the German Empire as an intellectual prison. He was so rebellious that he constantly stumped his teachers with arguments until the school finally expelled him for asking questions that corrupt other students. But that very rebelliousness, that refusal to conform to the crowd, was the initial spark that produced a mind brave enough to shatter all classical physics laws. So how did a low-level clerk at a patent office manage to dethrone the legendary Isaac Newton? The secret didn't lie in a multi-million-dollar laboratory, but in his wildly insane thought experiments. Part 2. The clerk who rewrote physics. In 1905, at age 26, Einstein went through the worst slump of his career. Constantly rejected for jobs because of his undisciplined nature, he had to settle for the most boring desk job on the planet, reviewing patent application files 8 hours a day in Bern, Switzerland. But every time his boss turned around, this low-level clerk secretly pulled out his desk drawer and scribbled math formulas on scrap paper. Without a telescope or a particle accelerator, Einstein explored the deepest mysteries of the universe using pure imagination. He asked himself a seemingly ridiculous question. If I ride a light beam at 300,000 km while holding a mirror, will I see my reflection? From that seemingly silly question, within just a few months in 1905, he released 4 revolutionary papers that sent shockwaves through the global scientific community. He proved to the world that time is not an absolute fixed tick of a universal clock. Time can stretch or compress depending on how fast you move through space. The faster you move, the slower time ticks around you. And if you reach the speed of light, time freezes completely. And he didn't stop there. He dropped the most seductive and powerful equation in human history. $2. This equation proved that mass and energy are just two sides of the same coin. A tiny speck of matter the size of a pea contains enough energy to obliterate an entire city. Academic physicists were completely stunned. Did this uncredentialed clerk just claim Isaac Newton was wrong for 200 years? Einstein didn't bother arguing in newspapers. He just smiled, puffed his pipe, and calmly waited for the universe to prove him right. Part 3. The Crazy Nobel Divorce Deal. If Einstein was a brilliant mastermind in science, in his personal life and marriage, he was a walking red flag. When his first marriage to Mileva Maric, a talented female mathematician, hit rock bottom and crumbled, Einstein didn't try to fix it. Instead, he drafted a bizarre divorce contract unprecedented in human history. He forced his wife to accept absurd conditions. She had to wash his clothes, serve 3 meals to his bed daily, and strictly stop expecting any intimacy. The ultimate psychological flex. He stated, "If I win the Nobel Prize in physics in the future, all the prize money goes to you. In exchange, sign the divorce papers right now." At that point, Einstein hadn't even touched a Nobel Prize. Yet he was arrogant enough about his brain to use future prize money to pay his breakup fee. And true to his audacity, a few years later he actually won the Nobel Prize in Physics and transferred every penny of the prize money to his ex-wife. The world went crazy for Einstein, turning him into the first global intellectual rock star. But he hated crowd obsession so much that whenever strangers stopped him on the street for an autograph, he demanded $1 to donate to charity. His legendary messy hair wasn't an artistic fashion statement. He was simply too lazy to comb it and deeply hated wearing socks. Einstein's life philosophy was simple. Life is way too short to waste time putting on socks. Part 4. The Atomic Bomb Regret. But the pinnacle of human intellect inadvertently led to the single worst apocalyptic disaster in history. As Nazi Germany rose to threaten Europe, Einstein, as a Jewish scientist, had to abandon everything and flee to America. There, he discovered to his horror that Nazi nuclear physicists were actively researching atomic bombs based on his own E Howard makes $2 equation. Facing the nightmare of Hitler possessing weapons of mass destruction, Einstein had to make the most painful decision of his life. He put pen to paper and signed a letter to U.S. President Roosevelt, urging America to develop nuclear technology before the Germans. That historic letter was the spark that ignited the Manhattan Project, giving birth to the two atomic bombs, Little Boy and Fat Man. In August 1945, upon hearing that Hiroshima and Nagasaki were wiped off the map in a split second, killing over 200,000 people, Einstein collapsed in his office, held his head in agony, and uttered bitterly, "Woe is me." Until the end of his days, he called that letter to the U.S. president the greatest mistake and the most painful tragedy of my entire life. The equation he created out of pure love for the beauty of the universe was ultimately turned by humanity into a weapon of mass slaughter. Part 5. Inside the Genius Mind. In his final years, the Israeli government offered him the presidency, but he flatly declined, knowing his limits. I know a little about equations, but nothing about politics. On April 18, 1955, on his hospital bed, the genius's final words were spoken in German. But tragically, the American nurse standing beside him didn't understand a single word of German. The final message of the 20th century's greatest mind vanished forever into thin air. But the story of his brain didn't end there. By the 1990s, when medical researchers finally analyzed the 240 stolen pieces of his brain, they made a shocking discovery. Einstein's brain size was not larger than average. In fact, it weighed slightly less than average. However, his parietal lobe, the region responsible for spatial thinking and high-level math, was 15% wider than an average person's. The density of glial cell connections inside his brain was thicker than anything ever recorded in human neurology. Einstein proved to humanity that genius isn't born from brain size or weight, but shaped by infinite, unbridled curiosity. He once left behind a quote that summarized his entire essence. "I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious." From a child rejected by his school to the titan who redefined humanity's understanding of the cosmos, Einstein lived a life beyond all ordinary boundaries. What do you think about Dr. Thomas Harvey stealing Einstein's brain? Was it a tribute to science or a creepy act of vandalism? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss our next wild history breakdowns. Thanks for watching until the very end. Bonus Stickman frame. Einstein Stickman sticking his tongue out for the iconic meme photo. Stay curious, my friends. See you next time. Bye-bye.